On a global map, Australia appears as a colossus, a vast golden landmass spanning nearly 7.7 million square kilometers. It is the sixth largest nation on Earth, comparable in size to the contiguous United States. But if you look at a satellite view of the world at night, a strange pattern emerges. While Europe, India, and North America are ablaze with the light of human civilization, Australia is almost entirely dark. Nearly 90% of this continent is officially considered uninhabitable. Over 85% of its 27 million people are huddled in a thin neon rim along the coast, rarely venturing more than 50 kilometers from the ocean. For every square kilometer of land, there are only 3.5 people, one of the lowest population densities in the human story. What actually makes a land uninhabitable? Why did nature draw a line in the sand here and tell humanity no further? Before we explore the furnace of the outback, ensure you are subscribed to Wonder Doc Studio. We explore the hidden mechanics of our world. The tragedy of the empty continent began with a biological delusion. In the 1800s, European explorers, used to the lush river systems of the Northern Hemisphere, were convinced that a massive inland sea must exist at Australia's heart. They believed a land this size couldn't possibly be empty. In 1860, explorers Burke and Wills set out on the most expensive expedition in Australian history to find it. They didn't find an ocean, they found a graveyard. They died of starvation in a land they deemed useless, literally walking over some of the richest mineral deposits on the planet without knowing it. To understand why they failed, we have to look at the atmosphere. Australia is the driest inhabited continent on Earth. 70% to 80% of the mainland receives less than 500 millimeters of rain per year. This is caused by a phenomenon called the rain shadow. The Great Dividing Range, a mountain chain running down the East Coast, acts like a biological wall. It traps the moist air from the Pacific, dumping rain on the coast and leaving the interior in a permanent drought. But people often ask, why not just pump water to the center? The answer is a startling no. It's the soil. Australia is the oldest, flattest, and most geologically dead landmass. Unlike other continents, Australia hasn't had significant volcanic activity or glacier movements for millions of years. The soil is ancient and leached. In parts of Western Australia, the soil is 900 million years old. You can bring water to this desert, but you cannot easily bring life to soil that has had its phosphorus and nitrogen washed away by a billion years of rain. Only 6% of the continent is truly arable, meaning it can grow food. Australia is a giant that has to survive on the appetite of a dwarf. Because the center is a furnace, Australia became a coastal civilization. Nearly 40% of the entire population lives in just two cities, Sydney and Melbourne. Yet beneath this empty desert lies one of the world's greatest secrets, the Great Artesian Basin. It is a massive underground reservoir covering 22% of the continent. This hidden ocean is the only reason life exists in the interior at all, providing the lifeblood for cattle stations larger than entire European nations. But humans aren't the only ones fighting for this space. To protect the fertile southeast from the wild interior, Australians built the longest fence in the world, the Dingo Fence. Stretching 5,614 kilometers, it is longer than the distance from London to New York. It is a physical scar across the continent, a desperate attempt to divide the habitable from the wild. This struggle even led to the surreal Great Emu War of 1932, where the Australian military was deployed with machine guns to fight off 20,000 emus migrating in search of water. The humans lost. It was a humiliating reminder that in the empty continent, the wildlife holds the high ground. However, the word uninhabitable is a modern perspective. For over 65,000 years, First Nations people did not just survive, they managed the land. They used fire stick farming, a sophisticated system of cool burning that prevented catastrophic bushfires. They mapped the desert using song lines, verbal encyclopedias that memorized every hidden waterhole across thousands of kilometers. They didn't see an empty continent. They saw a meticulously managed estate. Today, the empty space is the engine room of the global economy. The Pilbara region alone produces nearly 40% of the world's seaborne iron ore. The void produces $450 billion in exports annually, yet it is populated only by fly-in, fly-out workers who live in temporary pods. It is a landscape of extraction, not habitation. And now the narrative is shifting again. The very sun that made the interior uninhabitable is becoming its greatest asset. The outback is being reimagined as a global green energy hub, with projects like the Sun Cable aiming to export solar power across the ocean. As we reach the end of this journey, we must rethink what it means for a land to be empty. We often measure the success of a nation by how much of it we can pave over. But Australia stands as a silent monument to the limits of human expansion. 90% of this continent may be uninhabitable by our standards, but it is far from a failure. It is a vast, breathing laboratory of evolution. It is a reminder that we do not own the Earth. We merely inhabit the small corners it allows us to occupy. The empty continent isn't a void to be filled. It is a masterpiece of nature to be respected. In this day and age, the future of our planet depends on how we respect these boundaries. Literally and figuratively,